Come to Remora TC to trade like a shark and not get eaten by one. Let's school together to protect and grow our money. Here's Microsoft on 5 February. A few annotations to point out. Overhead resistance here at 430, support at around 405, and bearish divergence here. You can also see this arrow that I drew indicating that the momentum to me was going to be downward and then retest this 405 as support. Let's see how I did on 8 February. The annotations are pretty much the same with regard to the trend lines up here and below here. The RSI is even more bearish due to this all-time high of today. So you can see this indecision candle right there, this little tiny plus sign. My prediction remains the same with regard to the overhead resistance. I feel price is going to continue to go up, hit this as resistance, only to fail to come back down to this trend line over the next week. That's Microsoft. Switching to gold miners. On 5 February, I said there were two possible directions for price. From 5 February, I said it could either go up through this gap zone right here and then use the top of the gap as support, only to continue up and do a breakout. That was A. B was the idea that price would go up, hit the top of this gap, and get rejected so that price would continue to go down. Now, the reason for this indecision on my part is due to not a lot of bullish divergence, only some, maybe 3 weeks of bullish divergence. Let's see how I did. 8 February, that's today, you can see the 3 candles. It didn't quite reach this zone of resistance. In fact, it failed, went down below the bottom of the gap, and you have this indecision candle here, this little plus sign. So what I did was I removed the A thesis, which was a breakout up here. I'm sticking with this B thesis here, where price would come up, use this as resistance. So we'll have to see over the next few days if price will continue its downward move. And I put this new annotation here of support at 26.66. I think if price comes down here, this might be a zone of early support, whereas this one is a little bit further down here at the 26. I've been talking about this one for a while as a beautiful entry for a long. But if it comes down here, maybe I'll consider, depending on how much bullishness appears. Okay, so this might be an entry which I hadn't thought about until today. Switching to ExxonMobil. ExxonMobil on 5 February. The annotations here show a zone of support down here at the 101, some overhead resistance at the 104, and if you include the 200-day moving average as it moves downward, or this gap fill here in the beige, to me that's all overhead resistance. And you can see down here, there's bullishness. Switching to 8 February, I forgot to annotate it here, but this is 8 February. The price action you can see over the last 3 days was upward. So it used this zone of support. It moved up, and now it's starting to hit some resistance. I think there's still a little bit more room for ExxonMobil to continue into this resistance. They might wick it up tomorrow. Overall, though, I feel price is going to move down over the next week. Okay, I don't think it will break through and use it as support. But if it does, then we'll have to consider it as a long play, because then if it can get through this resistance zone, then the next target would be up here on this trend line up here. So for now, my thesis is hit resistance to get rejected and downward price action. Switching to Bitcoin, on 5 February, I said that this is a zone of resistance and price would continue its downward move. Today, 8 February, you can see the last 3 days of price action completely invalidated my downward thesis. I thought this trend line here would continue to hold as resistance, but in fact, price broke through with a little bit of additional volume today. You can see this volume candle was more than the last 2 days. And so it's up here. And so if it's up here, I have to change my thesis because that's the objective thing to do. I think price will bounce up and down here a little bit, and it will test new highs. So you can see the former high over the past few months is right here. And I think what it will do is it will test the new high, and perhaps it may even keep the bearish divergence. So I circled it here. You can see that the RSI hasn't even broken through the 70 or 75 zone here for RSI, and it may continue this downward trajectory despite price going up higher. And that would tell us that it would likely fail overall. Okay, so we'll watch it over the next few weeks. And that's all. As always, remember that my content is for educational purposes only. It's not investment advice. Please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. And when you subscribe, please do hit the bell icon